let me begin by saying, if I were to ask you, if you think of the most incredible people in the world, the leaders that have changed everything for the positive, whoever they might be, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, maybe it's Elon for you, maybe it's Steve Jobs, whoever it might be, and you ask yourself what made those leaders incredibly successful? What made them, able to dominate their field? Was it the money they had? Was it the technology? Was it their friends? Or maybe was it their mindset? And I hope you'd agree that their mindset, how they see opportunities, how they see challenges, is what enables them to be an extraordinary leader. And if you believe that, then the question I have for you is, what mindset do you have? Where did you get that mindset? And very importantly, and perhaps most importantly, what mindset do you need for this next decade, which is going to be very different than any decade in the past? And how do you develop it? So I'm going to talk about a few different mindsets at the beginning. Then we are going to dive into AI, just how fast it's moving, where it's going, how to leverage it. We'll talk about a few other exponential technologies and get to your Q&A. So the first element that I talk about for mindset is a purpose-driven mindset, what I call a massive transformative purpose. It is one of the most important things that you can have. It's what is that purpose that wakes you up in the morning and keeps you going through the day? Doing anything big and bold in the world, I mean, truly transforming the world and creating something that is new and uplifts humanity. It's hard. You're going to fail over and over and over again unless you're driven by what I call a massive transformative purpose. You're not going to power through to the end. Right? We think of these moonshots as something that's super easy and someone did it and they did it in a year. But guess what? These moonshots are typically, overnight successes after 11 years of hard work. One of my favorite quotes is this one from Mark Twain, who said, "There are two important days in your life, the day you were born and the day you find out why." And so my question for you is, have you found out why? And what is your massive transformative purpose, right? What is that guiding light that when shit gets really hard, and if you're doing something big and bold, you're going to hit a rock after a rock after a rock, and you're going to say, do I really want to do this? Well, your MTP is that sort of guiding star, and the clouds part, and you see it. You go, oh yes, that's why I'm doing it. The other thing, which is very clear to me, is I mentor hundreds of CEOs running multi-billion-dollar companies. I say, listen, you need an MTP not just for yourself as a leader. You need one for your company, because today's smartest entrepreneurs look for purpose in their work. They back companies that are purpose-driven, and just making more money is not a purpose unto itself. So making sure that if you're starting a company, your company has a massive transformative purpose as well. By the way, I created an AI model called it's AI Purpose Finder. I'm sorry, mypurposefinder.ai. I should have jotted it down here. It's mypurposefinder.ai. It's free. You can play with it, and it will walk you through developing an MTP for yourself or for your company. It's mypurposefinder.ai. All right, moving along. Here's the next mindset that is making massive fortunes and destroying massive fortunes. It's exponential thinking. And here's the problem. Our brains, we have 100 billion neurons and 100 trillion synaptic connections. Our brains are neural nets. And our brains originally evolved for the world 200,000 years ago on the savannas of Africa. And back then, the world was local and linear. Nothing affected you that was not within a day's walk, right? You had the ability to project extremely well in a linear fashion. Can I get to that tree over there before the lion gets to me? That's all that mattered. But today, we're living in a world that is global and exponential. And one of the terms that when I founded Singularity University with Ray Kurzweil, that I went to the board and I wrote is 10 to the ninth plus. And it's the notion that each and every one of us today has the ability to positively impact the lives of 1 billion people. 10 to the ninth is scientific notation for 1 billion. That positive sign is about the positive impact you create. And I'm always encouraging people, how do you go bigger in your world? How do you think about what can I do that could impact the lives of 1 billion people in a positive fashion? Because you can, right? It never was the case before. But today, with the resources that you have of the internet and of large language models and of a million other exponential technology linked capabilities, you can. And if you can, I think that it's a sort of a moral imperative for us to do what we can to uplift all of humanity. As I said, we're local and linear thinkers, right? That's how our brains are wired. And along that lines, if I said to you where you're going to be in 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in 30, linear paces, you're 30 meters away. And we're all really good. I mean, if you pointed where you'd be in 5 meters or where you'd be in 30 meters, you can pretty well guess that within 10%. That's the way our brains are wired. But if I said to you where you're going to be in 30 exponential steps, where an exponential is a simple doubling, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, unless you have it memorized, people don't realize in 30 doublings, you're not 30 meters away, you're a billion meters away. Put differently, you've gone around the earth 26 times. And it's that disconnect between our linear minds and the exponential world that we're inhabiting that is creating incredible opportunity and incredible disruptions. We'll talk about that. Okay, another mindset, and I love this for entrepreneurs. I teach this, I invest. I have 2 large venture funds. I invest in this area. And it's, how do I give you a moonshot mindset? So what's a moonshot mindset? Well, I think most everybody, probably not you, but most everybody is really happy with 10% growth, right? If I could do 10% better on revenues year on year, that's pretty damn good. If I could reduce my cost by 10%, increase the number of customers by 10%, that's how the majority of the world is thinking. But if I said to you, no, that's not good enough. How do you go 10x? 10x is 1,000%, right? How do you do that? That's moonshot mindset. That's 10x thinking. So let me share this quote that I love. So Burt Rutan, legendary aviation designer, I put up a $10 million X Prize back in 1996. We launched it. I put some of the money in, all wasn't mine. Anush Ansari funded the lion's share of that. But it was a prize for private space flight, before SpaceX, before Blue Origin, before any of that. And Burt said something one day. He said, the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And I said, that's absolutely true, right? If it wasn't a crazy idea yesterday, it would not be a breakthrough today. So when I'm talking to moonshot entrepreneurs, people who really want to go big, I'm saying, okay, where are you thinking about your crazy ideas? Because if you're not, you're stuck in linear incremental growth. So you've got to have some kind of a capability to actually think massively disruptive. And what you have as a tool today is you can open up Grok 3 or GPT 4.0 or Google 2.5, and you can say, hey, this is my business. This is how I make money. These are my business models. What are some absolutely insane ideas that would enable me to have 1,000% growth? And play with those ideas, right? That's moonshot thinking. A curiosity mindset is another mindset that I teach. I'm putting out a book next year called Mindset Mastery, which is going to cover all of these. But one of the most important things I can ask all of us, because I remind myself in this regard to think about, is it's so critical to always be asking great questions. When I have 2 13-year-old boys, when I drop them at school, they've gotten to be a joke for them now because they say, I know, Dad, I know, ask great questions. But I think that's one of the most important things we can do is, as CEOs, as entrepreneurs, as parents, ask great questions. We're heading into a world, and we'll talk about this later, where you can know anything, sensors around the world, incredible AI pulling that data together. And in this world where you can know anything, asking great questions is far more important than what you know. So how do you get into a habit with a curiosity mindset of asking great questions? Last mindset I want to cover here is an abundance mindset. Our brains, again, evolved on the savannas of Africa back when the world was dangerous and scarce. And our default software, the way our brain works, whether you like it or not, is fear and scarcity. We default to fear, we default to scarcity. Uh, and fear and scarcity is the absolute wrong place for you to be encountering this exponential future from. And I can't say that strongly enough, right? So fear, we get fear because we're constantly bombarded by what I call the crisis news network, CNN, or the constantly negative news network. I don't have a great acronym for Fox. And their job is to keep us in a state of fear. So we stay glued to the TVs. Their job is to deliver our eyeballs to their advertisers. That's it. But we're living in a world of abundance, an amazing world of abundance. And technology is a force that transforms scarcity into abundance. I want to show you just a little bit of data before I turn to exponential tech and AI about the proof of abundance. I just want to shape your mindset away from the negative dystopian news to a positive side. So let's take a look at some data. And please let this in. Share this with your friends. I'm going to give you a chance to download all these slides at the end. So the world over the last 200 years has gone from 90% extreme poverty to down below, way below 10% today. We've increased global literacy rate around the world where almost everyone has access, massive access, the ability to read. Child mortality has plummeted. It used to be a 45% chance whether or not your child would live till age 5, which is insane, right? It's down to like 4% now, still way too high. Global life expectancy, and this is my field, I spent half my life in AI, half my life in longevity. We doubled the human lifespan, and we're going to double it again. You wouldn't know this watching the news, but deaths from malnutrition have gone down threefold. Energy costs have declined and plummeted. That yellow line over there is solar. Look at how rapidly that's come down. We're more connected than ever before, about 7 billion smartphones on the planet, probably about 9 billion handsets on the planet. I know this isn't true for you. It's definitely not true for me, but annual hours that we've worked has been cut in half. And these are numbers that surprise everybody. Conflicts are less deadly. Deaths per 100,000 people, including soldiers and civilians, has gone down massively since World War II over the last 70 years. This is homicides. And on the far left, that blue line, that's the Middle Ages. People think about, oh, in the good old days. Bullshit. In the good old days, you were dead or dying from pestilence, and life was short and brutal and hard, right? And then this one just blows me away. This is data from the FBI in the United States over the last 30 plus years. Crimes per 100,000 people have dropped by a factor of 2. So again, you wouldn't know this watching the news. So why is this happening? Why is this incredible progression? Now, it's not to say that we don't have problems. We've got plastics, we've got obesity, we've got social media, we've got all these other problems going on. Granted, but why are those up and to the right or up down and to the right, whatever it might be? What are those charts telling us a good news story? Is it we have better politicians? Have we gotten smarter? No, it's the impact of technology. It's the impact of computation growing exponentially, and this is on a log scale, but it's still curving upwards, which tells us that the rate at which computers are getting faster is itself getting faster. And also the fact that the price of this stuff is plummeting, again, on a log scale here. I love this chart. It's so hard for us to remember that the stuff we did between breakfast and lunch today would be considered godlike by our ancestors. We forget how incredible the world we're in is. And I want you to let that in for a second. This is a magical time to be alive. And there's very little you cannot do. And we're going to create incredible new uplifting capabilities for humanity, for all of us, solving our problems, creating new problems and solving those problems. So what makes things different today is what I call, accelerating and converging exponentials. It used to be that years ago you could be an expert in any one of these fields, and that was good. Today, you really need to see how three, four, or five of these are coming together, right? Computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, all of these technologies are converging and reinventing industries. And so you don't need to be an expert in tech, but you should understand what it means and where it's going, because this is either one of the meta trends that can just dis totally disrupt you. For example, if you're in the traditional hotel industry and Airbnb comes along, or in the taxi industry and Uber comes along, these are not, random occurrences. They're projectable. And we'll talk about how do you project them. And this is one of the ways. So I wrote about in my early books, Abundance Bold. I've written 4 or 5 now bestsellers. Um, and I talk about the 6 Ds of exponentials. And I want you to really let this in. What are the 6 Ds of exponential technologies? The first is that your job as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a thought leader, is to figure out what can you digitize that has not yet been digitized. Right? Because when you digitize something, turn it into a 1 and a 0, get rid of the physical elements of it, what happens next is you dematerialize it, right? So on my phone, I have millions of dollars of digitized products and services. And when you dematerialize these things, they're no longer physical things in my life, they're now apps on the phone. You demonetize them because the ability to copy an app, a 1 and a 0, is effectively zero cost. The cost of transmitting it is zero. And ultimately, you democratize. Your marketplace is no longer Poughkeepsie, New York, or San Diego, California. Your marketplace is the planet. And what began as slow, deceptive growth in the early days, and I'll talk about that, right? Bitcoin, when it first was launched, a Bitcoin was 0.0001, dollar per Bitcoin. And then slowly it starts growing. It's deceptive. People aren't noticing it. And then boom, it's disruptive. And it's ready to completely, disrupt financial markets. We see this over and over again. This is the 6 Ds roadmap. So my question for you is, what can you digitize that enables you to reach, 1 billion people around the world? This is what it looks like when you digitize and dematerialize. When I was growing up, that was Radio Shack. I would go there and buy that stuff. Now all these things fit in your pocket. And if you were to do a reasonable estimate of how much value are on the apps in your phone, you probably would find it to be, $5, $10 million if you're trying to buy that capability. 30 years ago, it's extraordinary. And where's it going? Well, over the next decade, we are going to disrupt, reinvent every industry on the planet. There is nothing safe. And I honestly feel that no one truly understands how fast this is moving. This is moving at a rate that few entrepreneurs, few politicians understand. It is basically moving such that what Ray talks about is the singularity. Singularity means that I can't predict what's going to come next. That's how fast it's moving. So I want to give you a couple of examples, and these are classic examples, just so you understand it. Kodak in 1996, top of its game. You may or may not have ever bought a roll of Kodak film. I remember it was the center of every one of my vacations. A guy named Steven Sasson comes up with the idea of a digital camera. And the first digital camera took 0.01 megapixel images in black and white on a tape drive. He brings it into the boardroom of Kodak, and Kodak says, "That's a toy for kids. We're Kodak, we make beautiful high resolution images. And besides, we're in the paper and chemicals business." That was their fault. They forgot what business they were really in. It wasn't paper and chemicals. The reason George Eastman founded Kodak was to help preserve people's memories. And when they ignored the digital camera because it would have forced them to change their business model, they went bankrupt. And the same year that they go bankrupt, Instagram gets bought by Facebook for $1 billion with 13 employees. People laughed, said, what a ridiculous price to pay. Well, it's now $100 billion on Meta's balance sheet. And this is what it looks like when a linear technology, that yellow line down at the bottom, film technology, falls off a cliff and a digital technology skyrockets. Now, I couldn't possibly put the numbers that exist today. This is back in 2017. Otherwise, the chart would be a little blip on the bottom. Here's another example, and I love this example as well. It's Netflix versus Blockbuster. I say when Netflix ate Blockbuster for lunch. That red line over there is Blockbuster, $6 billion of revenues. It's the captain, it's leading the industry. And here comes little Netflix. Reed Hastings is running it, and in that blue line, he's sending out DVDs to people via the mail. And then circa 2010, guess what happens? Broadband comes along. We go from atoms to bits, and it explodes onto the scene, right? Literally goes from $2 billion to $300 billion valuation over 11 years. And here's what I want you to know about this. If you look at that dotted line, it's the end of 2008. And Netflix, for the second time, Blockbuster, for the second time, passes on the opportunity to buy Netflix because Blockbuster could not see this 60s roadmap that was coming. And of course, they go bankrupt. And here's what the CEO of Blockbuster said in December of 2008. Netflix is not even on the radar screen in terms of competition. I mean, how much wrong could you be? Right? So it's critically important for you to be thinking about how do you digitize, dematerialize, demonetize, democratize your products and services. All right, let's jump into the most important subject we're going to discuss today, which is AI. And how do you think about it? Where's it going? And how fast is it going there? And then we'll get into your Q&A for the last 15 minutes or so. So first of all, it's important for you to know that AI is not brand new. It's been around as a conversation for 69 years. There was a conference back in 1956 at Dartmouth University. Some of the smartest people in the United States got together to solve AI that summer. They thought they could solve it that summer. Well, guess what? They didn't. But why is it exploding now? Why didn't it get solved back then? Well, there are 5 reasons. The first is we finally have enough computation, right? Over the last 6-7 years, there's finally enough computation for us to run the algorithms that were designed much earlier to enabling AI. The second reason is we have a massive amount of data. Data is the food that fuels AI, large language models, large quantitative models, and it's doubling every 2 years. Number 3, the algorithms have gotten just incredibly good, faster and faster, more and more efficient, both in the US and China. Number 4 is capital. The amount of money going in, it's $1 billion a day in 2025. $1 billion a day is being invested into AI. So this is 2021. It was $160 billion annually. That was all companies, by the way. Last year, it was $152 billion from just 3 companies. Today in 2025, again, it's going to be estimated at $360 billion or $1 billion a day from all the companies. And I want to play a short video here, but let me read this for you. This is the conversation going on in Silicon Valley. We don't think of these build-outs, these are the large language models, in terms of return on investment. If we create this digital god, the return is multiple trillions, right? Let's listen to Sam Altman speak about this.
Whether we burn 500 million a year or 5 billion or 50 billion a year, I don't care. I genuinely don't. As long as we can, I think, stay on a trajectory where eventually we create way more value for society than that, and as long as we can figure out a way to pay the bills, like we're making AGI, it's going to be expensive. It's totally worth it.
That's the mindset that's driving billions of dollars into this field, hundreds of billions of dollars. And it's important for you to understand it's not slowing down, it's accelerating. The 5th reason is the amount of young talent, perhaps many of you who are focused on AI, who are investing in AI. This is publications are growing exponentially. So I run a $500 million venture fund in the AI space based out of MIT called Link Exponential Ventures. We invest mostly out of MIT teams and Harvard teams, Northeastern teams, basically in the Boston area. And I want to show you this because it's where the world is today. This used to be a bell-shaped curve. The question is, in what year is the founder who's building a billion-dollar VC-backed private company? It used to be that 30 to 34 was the peak. It's shifted way to the left. And what we're seeing is because the tools enabling you to build an AI company are so easy and ubiquitous and cheap and available that we're getting this incredible shift earlier, right? So at MIT, 70% of incoming freshmen want to build and start a company, by graduation day. That's what's going on. And then the other thing that's going on, again, data from my venture fund, is the average time to go from startup to $1 billion market cap has plummeted. So we have right in our current portfolio at Link Exponential Ventures, we have two companies that have reached $2 billion in under 2 years valuation. It's insane. I've never seen anything like this before. Sundar, who's a friend, the CEO of Alphabet, said AI could have more profound implications for humanity than electricity or fire. The way I say it is there are two kinds of companies at the end of this decade: those that are fully utilizing AI and those that are out of business. Ray Kurzweil, who's been my mentor, a dear friend, one of the smartest futurists on the planet, futurist at Google. In 1999, he predicted that we would have human-level AI by 2029. So he made a prediction 30 years out. Everyone laughed at him, said, it's crazy, never going to happen. Well, no one's laughing now. In fact, the notion perhaps is that maybe it's conservative. There's a lot of conversation going on right now that AI, we're going to have AGI this year, 2026, the latest. So Elon's prediction is by the end of 25, AI will be vastly smarter than any human and as smart as all humans by 2030. You'll hear him say that in a minute. So what's enabling this? Well, there are two eras of AI training compute. That first portion at the bottom between 57, 58 and 2010 is Moore's Law. It's the period of computation from Intel. Then we see this going from 2x every 2 years to 10x per year. Here's another look. This is NVIDIA creating 1,000x AI compute in 8 years' time. And so, NVIDIA is increasing its compute 125 times faster than Moore's Law during the last 8 years. Again, extraordinary. And on this substrate of compute is what is enabling AI to explode like never before anticipated. And if you had gone back in time and you asked somebody, okay, listen, there's going to be this software you can ask anything to. It can do your program for you. It can read the internet. It can answer any questions, medical diagnosis, and so forth. How much should someone charge for that service? I would have never predicted that it would be available for free. All right, that's kind of insane. But what we're seeing here is that these models are massively commoditized and demonetized. Here is March of 23 through August of 24, a 79% drop price per year over that 17-month period, and it's continuing. AI is big. How big is it? Let me give you some numbers here. So this is the telecom and communications market on the upper left. There's the financial market in the bottom right. And then here's NVIDIA versus the financial market, right? One company. This is back in Q3 of 2024. This is massive and getting more so. So I run something called the Abundance Summit. in the Abundance 360 membership, and I mentor about 500 CEOs from around the world, running 10 million to $10 billion companies. And last year, I bring together an incredible faculty, the CEOs of the major AI companies and such. And last year, I've known Elon for 25 years. I brought Elon on stage, but he came on while he was flying at 30,000 feet over Starlink, over X video, which is why I'm holding my phone. But just listen to what he has to say about the future of AI.
You know, I saw your tweet about, yeah, Ray was generally correct ahead of many people, but we're likely to have, call AGI what you will, have AGI next year, and then by 2029 having AI equally intelligent to the entire human race. Speak to that speed, because that is insane.
I mean, I have to give credit to Ray Kurzweil in being actually remarkably accurate in his predictions. In fact, if anything, I think he was perhaps a bit conservative in his predictions. So, I mean, if you look at the amount of AI compute and the talent, the dedicated AI compute, it appears to be growing by a factor of 10 every 6 months, almost like a 100x improvement per year, at least for the next few years. So when you have that level of compute growth, it's sort of Moore's law on steroids next level, in terms of how much compute is coming online. You're just going to have acceleration that is unprecedented. In fact, I've never seen any technology grow as fast as AI. And I've seen a lot. I've seen things fast, but I've never seen anything this fast. I think it's probably end of next year before AI can do better than any individual human can do. But if the rate of change continues, that's why I think probably 2029 or maybe 2030 is where digital intelligence will probably exceed all human intelligence combined.
So what's that sound like to you when AI exceeds all human intelligence combined? How's that going to change your business plan? How's it going to change what you're focused on? It's important for us to understand that. Here's another way to look at it. Very quickly, GPT-2, GPT-3, you remember those. You remember when ChatGPT came out and GPT-4, a smart high schooler came out in March of 23. We're going to see GPT-5 coming out sometime this year, early 26. But what happens next is that GPT-5, Grok 3, Grok 3.5, Anthropic 4, all of these are going to become self-referential AI programmers. They're going to begin automating AI research. And when that happens, what's predicted is an intelligence explosion, right? The birth of artificial superintelligence. And this is what is going to change the game dramatically over the course of the next few years. Sam recently said, we're now confident on how to build AGI. Great. AGI is sort of an undefined term. It's a blurry line, but he and others are now working on building out superintelligence. Again, this is where we're going. We've talked about agents. Probably you've heard the term 1,000 times. Zuckerberg recently said at the beginning of the year that AI agents could reach 1 billion users in 2025 and be the most important product in history. So that's his focus. I have a podcast called Moonshots. I interview all of these guys on Moonshots, and this was a conversation with Mark Benioff, who has been building Agentforce 2. But listen to what he says about agentic AI and his use of it inside of Salesforce.
Our head of engineering came to me about 3 weeks ago and said, we've been deploying this technology now over the last basically 2 years. We're writing code, delivering technology and capabilities faster than we've ever done. And we've got tens of thousands of engineers. We have 75,000 people total. And he's like, I don't want any more engineers this year. I'm like, what did you say? I don't want any more engineers this year. I'm like, you've never said that before. He goes, I know, but we are just in the last year 30% more productive, and we're doing great, and we just want to focus and get all this done.
So we're going to see a lot of shifting in your team, your employees, how you write code. I love this. This is a recent article that came out that AI is supercharging Y Combinator startups. for growth and profit. So in these startups, and this is this past quarter, AI is writing 95% of the code. And the winter batch at Y Combinator is growing 10% in valuation weekly as a result of their ability to use AI to write their code. Here's another look at this. This is AI performance versus human capabilities. And what you see there is reading comprehension, image recognition, language understanding, handwriting, speech, predictive. So we're seeing AI basically exceeding human capabilities in almost every field, and it will exceed every field. I have a hard time believing that there's any field that AI is not going to meet or exceed our capabilities. Here's another trend going on that's very important. It's how long can AI focus on a task? So in the early days, back down to GPT-2, GPT-3 would focus on a task for milliseconds. Today, Sonnet 3.7 can work on a task for almost an hour, right? So it's doubling every 7 months. And why that matters is you're able to now give it very complex research where it can go and do a multitude of different things and come back with a deep research analysis for you. This is what we're seeing in the marketplace. The number of jobs has dropped 70% as AI boosts productivity tenfold. There's another way to look at this. The number of workers required to generate $1 million in revenue since the late 80s has dropped from 8 workers per $1 million of revenue down to approaching a single person. We're seeing AI do incredible things like being able to predict the weather accurately, 15 days out. I love this one, because we think about AI giving us words and giving us images, but what about AI giving us new materials? So this is out of Microsoft. It's called MatterGen. Giving it a prompt and saying, "I'd like a material, please, that is permeable to oxygen and includes these atoms and has this electronic capacitance," and then it can design that material for you. That's extraordinary. It's going to revolutionize material science. AI is creating plastic-eating enzymes. So we're beginning to use AI across a multitude of different things. You're winning a Nobel Prize with AI right now. We just saw Demis Hassabis and John Jumper for AlphaFold winning the Nobel Prize this year for being able to predict the folding of a protein. And I find this fascinating. Most schools in the US, if you're joining from inside the United States, shuns AI, says, no, we can't use AI in the classroom. But that has got to change. So Beijing just rolled out AI courses for kids. It's making AI courses in primary and secondary schools mandatory starting in September. This is also true in Estonia. A friend of mine's school here down in Austin, Texas, affiliated with Elon's companies down there, has launched a new capability. It says a Texas private school is seeing student tests soar to the top 2% of the country after introducing an AI tutor. This is going to become fundamental. If you have kids, grandkids, nephews, nieces, this is going to need to be how we reinvent the school systems. We cannot wait for this to happen. My 13-year-olds in middle school, I'm pissed that they're not using AI everywhere. Yeah, we have to make the problems different, make the problems harder, get them to aspire bigger, but these are the tools they're going to be using for the rest of their lives. All right, let's jump into an adjacent topic, which is the embodiment of AI. AI is going to get a physical embodiment in the form of humanoid robots. And this number of 50 is probably old. There's probably 100 well-funded humanoid robot companies out there today. Let me show you a few, but here's the key point. These are, half of the GDP is due to labor. So the global GDP is 110 trillion. It'll be 120 trillion next year. Half of that is labor. So the total addressable market is massive for these robots. So this is Optimus. Hopefully you've seen this. This is part of Tesla. So putting aside politics and what Elon's doing in the government for the moment, and Tesla stock being half the price, we're going to see Optimus robots being probably the major profit driver for Tesla. Elon's prediction is 10 billion humanoid robots by 2040, and that these robots will be the #1 product that Tesla produces, in addition to the cyber taxis. And this is another company called Figure. Full disclosure, I'm an investor in Figure, but here you can see Figure 2, their current robot design.
I'd like you to use your new Helix AI and try to reason through where you think they belong in the scene, and then work together to put them away. Does that sound good?
There are other robots like Neo.
Right there. How's this? Perfect.
And the news is out that Apple and Meta are developing their own humanoid robots. A lot going on in China right now. This is Engine AI out of Shenzhen. And this is Unitree. I just had Unitree. At my Abundance Summit, I bring the top robot companies together so you can touch them, play with them, and so forth. But check out Unitree. It's an amazing little robot. So another kind of robot is the autonomous car. We've got, of course, Waymo from Google, Alphabet. I take it in Santa Monica, where I live. Tesla's robotaxi or cybercab is going to be deployed this year in the US. I had Kathy Wood, who runs ARK Invest, on stage with me twice this past Abundance Summit. And her prediction is that we're going to see a 20% global GDP bump over 10 years due to this in terms of productivity of humans. We're seeing eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff or landing. Had the Archer team at the Abundance Summit showing their latest vehicles. There's about, there used to be like 30 top eVTOL companies. There's probably 6 or 7 today that will be operationalized. These are multi-billion-dollar companies. They're manufacturing. They'll be entering the marketplace. They're currently in different parts of the Middle East. They'll be entering the US in the next year or so, hopefully in LA by 28 for the Olympics. And I love this. This is another version of these flying vehicles. These are delivery drones. Let's take a listen to Mark here.
I cut my finger making lunch, so I placed an order for some Band-Aids a couple minutes ago, and now they're 4 seconds away. That is a nearly silent drone system that can deliver a package from the sky right to my backyard in as little as 2 minutes with dinner plate accuracy. And as far as I'm concerned, that's basically teleportation. This is the very near future of package delivery from a company called Zipline.
So there's Zipline and then there's Wing from Alphabet. And these companies are becoming operationalized in the US, right? You'll be able to order something and get it 4 minutes later. I want to hit on a couple of other small topics before we get to Q&A. The first is, and it's very important, I mentioned this about the importance of asking great questions. Well, we're heading towards a world in this coming decade where you can know everything, and you're connected always, everywhere, right? So SpaceX has over 7,000 satellites in orbit today. I have access on my T-Mobile phone, which is pretty amazing. And we're getting 100 megabit level connection speeds. 5G is going to be hitting 3 billion handsets this year. 6G is coming up very quickly. But here's the important point I want you to understand. In the coming 5 years, we're going to see hundreds of thousands of satellites in orbit, looking down and communicating down. In other words, we're going to have a massive increase in space comms and imaging. We're going to have a layer of drones and flying cars, tens of millions of these, that are able to image and communicate everywhere. And then on the ground, 8 billion smartphones, billions of autonomous vehicles, robots, wearables, smart homes. All of these things are basically gathering data all the time. And you're going to be able to ask any kind of a question you want. So my favorite example is if you're in the fashion business and you want to understand, hey, what's the average spectral color of a man's shirt on Madison Avenue? The cameras are there and you can know. You just have to start to realize you can ask questions that could never have been answered before because the sensor data is there, the networks are there, and the AI is there to do the analysis for you. So in the next decade, everything and everyone is connected always and everywhere. And this is a world in which you and your AI can know anything. So what's most critical for you as a leader, as an investor, as an entrepreneur is learning to ask great questions. So a couple of thoughts to close. Ray Kurzweil was on my stage along with Jeffrey Hinton and a few other of the top AI folks. We're having a conversation and Ray said something that was extremely important. He said, we will experience as much change in the next decade, 2025 to 2035, as humanity has experienced in the past century, 1925 to today. And the question is, are you ready for that? I have a program, my Abundance 360 is typically full way in advance. I created a digital program called Exponential Mastery, which you get digital access to the summit, and there's a master class that I teach. If this is of interest for you to learn more about that, then you can get access to this, and it's meant to be affordable and accessible to help people understand all of these different technologies and where they're going. I think we're living during the most extraordinary time ever in human history. There's never been a more exciting time to be alive. And as promised, here's the QR code, and you can gain access to all of these slides. Please share them with your friends, your family, your kids. I put out 2 blogs a week, one on AI and one on longevity. And if that's of interest to you, I'm happy to have you in my ecosystem. There's some URLs on the side there as well.
Thanks so much. We appreciate you joining us, Peter.
I know.
All right, and moving right on, which I think is really exciting, is we're going to go to Kane Minkus, who is, Peter's a dear friend of Kane, and this, how do we adopt this? What do we do with this? This is a perfect sort of lead on from what Peter's talking about, which is mind freakish, to okay, wait, so what do I do now? And how do I get help if I want to start a business or I own a business or